Hi Chris, how's it going?
Excellent, pal. How you doing?
Yeah, very good, thanks. And it's good to catch up with you. Last time we spoke, you'd done Red Notice and you'd lost, an enormous amount of body fat and you were completely shredded. And we talked about all that good stuff. And
Yep.
so I'm looking at this, another amazing project that you're in. And congrats on the commitment for Red Notice, by the way, because it was a great performance as well. I really enjoyed watching the movie. But
Cheers,
in
man.
terms of this project, it's a little different. And I'm trying to think about how we can catch up with your fitness now. And I guess, it gives people a chance to see a softer side with Mike, doesn't it?
Sure. Well, yeah. Depending on how you look at it, certainly a softer physical side. There's, you know, he's got a questionable moral compass, and this is a guy that he might, to quote Sean Connery, sell his mother for an Etruscan vase. This guy's a little slippery. Certainly, the physical requirements of this job were different. They weren't so much from an aesthetic standpoint as much as they were from a functional standpoint. I had to do a lot of literal heavy lifting on this show, and a lot of physical comedy that required falling and getting hurt and all of these things. So, funny as it may sound, my training needed to sort of mirror that. Add to that also the fact that there was no desire for the character to be particularly trim. So I actually took it upon myself to add a little bit of weight, to just give him a little bit more of an everyman who saw himself as a slightly elevated fellow. You know what I mean? Trim, but not to any sort of extreme. So I found myself just sort of focusing on just slow body weight stuff to keep myself flexible and strong. Lots of slow chin-ups, lots of slow body squats, lots of slow dips and push-ups and stuff like that, and not training very often, really just giving my body a chance to recover, usually probably 1 or 2 workouts a week.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And by softer, I wasn't kind of saying a softer figure. Like you say, he's got a funny moral compass, but at the same time, he's kind of got his loyalties, and there's some love for different people there somewhere along the way.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he definitely has a love and an affinity for Ruth's husband, Martin, who's fallen into the coma. Ruth he finds a bit prickly. And actually, as the series carries on, despite the fact that he's manipulating Remy, there is actually maybe a little bit of an admiration for Remy as well. Mike is a complicated character. He is, to use the Greek term, polytropos, which means multifaceted, many different characteristics within this one guy, and we see a lot of them over the course of these 6 short episodes.
Yeah. And you mentioned, you got the chance to maybe put on a couple of extra pounds and you weren't having to be as strict as Red Notice. But I imagine that you've probably had to learn that staying in shape is probably a little bit easier than having to go through different extremes. So I guess you still have to follow a set plan just during your regular life.
It's really true. And I used to, look, I was really lucky that from a metabolic standpoint, for many, many years, there wasn't a thing I could do that would actually put on any sort of meaningful weight. You know what I mean? I was always a lightweight kind of guy. But, they do say it catches up with you at a certain point, right? Mid 40s, early 40s, late 40s, whatever it is. And I will say, I think this job was the job where I started to realize that I can't really fuck around the way I used to, in the sense of, eat an extra large pepperoni pizza, and then the next day have burger and fries, and then the next day have a big breakfast with the pancakes. I mean, something's got to give, and I feel like by the end of this shoot, they were starting to need to potentially let my pants out a little bit, because I had just gotten so used to that. I will say that you're absolutely right. Staying in relative shape is kind of, that's the key, so that then I can dial it down or dial it up without going to any extremes. And I always have my little tricks for jump starting my system back into an aesthetic shape. Do you know what I mean? The little Hollywood tricks. And really, they're quite simple. I mean, it makes perfect sense. If I've gone too far in the wrong direction, it's just a matter of resetting by kind of stopping. I sort of start a fast. I do a 24-hour fast to give my body a chance to go, all right, pal, What are we doing here? And once I do that 24-hour fast and I get back into, all right, let's prioritize clean, real food, let's eat good fats, let's really prioritize protein, and let's keep carbohydrates to things that haven't been created, manufactured, or processed.
And so with things like craft services, I always wonder, do you have a strategy with things like
I
that?
do.
Or you do? Good.
It's a very good question. You know, my wife's an actor as well. She's on Lincoln Lawyer, and we talk about this all the time. You know, sets are intrinsically and inherently unhealthy places because you have all of this food readily available at all times, and 90% of it is terrible. It's, you know, M&Ms and Sour Patch Kids and Sloppy Joe sandwiches and potato chips and all of this stuff. Now, I will say that I've been seeing a trend on sets to have things on hand like little packaged olives or beef jerky, hard-boiled eggs, and so, you know, little cheese packets. For me, I think there's two ways to go to a set. You can either wake up in the morning and meditate on the fact that you are going to fast your entire day, that it's going to keep you clear and focused on the work, and then your reward at the end of the day is get home and make yourself a beautiful grass-fed steak, you know, and enjoy, you know, a glass of red with it or whatever it is, right? Or you can say, you know what, I'm not going to have the focus to fast all day just for various reasons. And so then you want to prioritize hard-boiled eggs. You can always have on a set. They're always available. You know, you could go toward cold cuts and stuff like that, but again, there's a lot of processed stuff in those. Hard-boiled eggs, olives, and grass-fed beef jerky, which they have those sticks now a lot, you can really get away with a ton. And then when lunchtime comes, they give you the menu. There's always a protein option. There's like a roast beef or, you know, braised ribs or something like that. And I just say pile it on. If I'm particularly hungry or doing something that's particularly physically exhausting, I'll have them throw in some sort of a healthy starch, whether it's a roast potato. Usually I want a baked potato because I know they can't have ruined it with any sort of cooking spray or vegetable oils. And I try to say, whenever possible, hey, if we're eating something that's cooked, cook it in butter, or at the very least, cook it in olive oil, or I try not to eat it, because those cooking oils can really mess with the stomach.
Yeah, there's those hidden things that people don't know about, like salad dressings and things like that, that can add up to being more than a cheeseburger and people don't even realize, do they?
Right, and more than the caloric addition, it's really what it does on your system, and it messes with you metabolically, it messes with your energy, and it also just makes you feel lousy. And on a set, the worst thing is to have stomach discomfort. You know, you don't want to be dealing with that.
Yeah. I love the humor of the show. I love the dry humor and the way things kind of slow. Sometimes it's the words that aren't said, isn't it? It's the way you can complete a line or a joke on your own. I mean, but you must have had a lot of fun with the cast kind of off camera as well as on camera.
We had a real special connection, a real special unexpected bond. And the three of us, Margot Martindale, Guillaume Cyr, and myself, we just got along like peas and carrots from the very, very get-go. And that's something you can't necessarily count on. You know, oftentimes you'll meet your co-stars and there won't be an intrinsic chemistry, and you have to both be professional and figure it out. In this instance, it was instant. And we laughed a tremendous amount in between takes. I will say that the three of us have a theater background. I worked on Broadway for years and years, as did Margot, and Guillaume comes from the theater in Montreal. So we all have a really healthy and strong professional foundation. So even when we were doing things on set in a scene that was ridiculously absurd or funny, or as you say, dryly funny, we could stay in character and not really break the scene by laughing, and we would save the laughter for in between takes and going to the pub afterwards.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And you're no stranger to action and that kind of thing, but it always fascinates me when I see an actor maybe rehearsing a take or maybe they do a take over and over again, just how much they have to think about because they've got the line that they need to say, they have to be looking in a certain direction, aware of where the cameras are, and maybe that they've got to run up some stairs or whatever it may be. And like you say, falling over and picking yourself up and making it all look good. I mean, does that have a cardio effect when you're kind of having to do that thing over and over again?
You know, listen, there are certain characters that I've played that really require a stamina, and you have to pace yourself. You also have to recognize what the focal length of the camera is. You know, they'll shoot something called a wide shot that shows everything. It shows, the background, it shows you head to toe, it shows the whole thing. Then they'll come in at a medium where it's probably, maybe closer from the knees up, and then they'll come in for a close-up. And you have to judge as an actor how much physical output are you going to do for all of those, and you have to have a conversation with the director. How are they hoping to edit it and cut it? Is this going to play in a close-up? If it's playing in a close-up, don't waste a lot of the physically exhausting stuff on the wide shot that they're not even really going to use. So you really have to understand how to budget your stamina. On a show like this, there is some actual physical heavy lifting. I did a lot of pratfalls because my character is wearing the wrong shoes for this snowy terrain, and I had to make sure that when I fell, I could repeat that fall over and over again for hours and hours and hours, different setups, different camera angles, different takes, without injuring myself. And so that's something that I've learned to do over time, that if I'm going to do something on a take, I have to be prepared to repeat it over and over and over again. I just came from Portland, where I'm shooting an exciting new show, also for Amazon, called Criminal. It's Ed Brubaker's show, and it stars, among other people, Charlie Hunnam and Emilia Clarke and Luke Evans. And now that's a show where not only are you reciting your lines and walking and looking in this direction and knowing where the camera is, but now you're dealing with gunfire and explosions and squibs and all of these things that require a tremendous amount of focus and the ability to forget that those are there as contrivances so that you can sell the moment as a realistic moment,
Yeah, making things look easy is the hardest thing of all, isn't it, sometimes?
It's
And I
right.
wonder, maybe having just 1 or 2 pounds, were you glad of having that extra 1 or 2 pounds because you could land rather than when you were cut and kind of 7% body fat and all that kind of thing?
It's so true. I saw my brother recently, and he's my training guru, my brother Gus. He runs a strength training facility in Toronto called the Strength Room, which is second to none. If you're ever in Toronto, you should make a note of setting an appointment to go to this guy's studio.
I will, yeah, definitely.
It is, and I'll set it up for you. But it
Thank you.
really is the most unique and efficient form of exercise, calibrated exercise. You've never done anything like this before. He's known me over the years at my various fat ranges and muscular ability, and he has something akin to a DEXA scan that can sort of tell me what my body fat is, what my muscle percentage is. And I'm at a higher rate now. I think I'm closer to 16% body fat. But he said to me, he goes, I got to be honest with you, from an aesthetic standpoint and from a power standpoint, because my muscle mass is up by about 6.5 pounds as well.
Yeah.
So he goes, I kind of like this on you. You're carrying a little extra fat, but it works, and it works for the power, and it's almost like it also allows me to lift heavier. It allows me to move at a stronger capacity. And I always, valued myself at a really low body fat and sort of endeavored to go in that direction. It's the first time that I don't mind a little extra meat on the bone. And it feels good. I feel a little more in my skin, to be honest with you. I'm approaching 50, and this feels right.
Yeah. No, you look great. You look great when you trim down, but you were so cut. And I'm looking at you now, and like you say, you look good. You look well. You look strong.
Yeah.
In no way are you carrying too many pounds.
No,
We're
I don't think
talking
so.
about you being on the kind of lower end of where you sometimes are. And
Yeah.
and I agree. I think you look good. But
Cheers.
I absolutely love the show and love you getting to do a slightly different character and come at it from a slightly different angle. Just keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully I'll check out that gym at some point, and we'll catch up on the next project.
Cheers, Scott. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. You've always got such insightful questions, and I mean that. When you're planning a trip North America and you're going to be in Toronto or near Toronto, reach out and we'll make sure that you can get into Gus's studio, because I feel like your readers will be riveted by what he is doing. It's called The Strength Room, and it's a nod to the Marvel Comics Charles Xavier's Danger Room, where the X-Men train. But except for, with them, they're trying to avoid, being blown to smithereens. And in Gus's facility, you are in the safest exercise protocol facility that I think there exists in the world.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. And thanks. I was looking forward to chatting with you because I knew we'd have a great chat, and I knew you'd give me some great answers as well. So keep doing what you're doing, and we'll catch up soon.
Cheers, Scott. All the best to you, buddy.